Welcome to the Narrowing Path, walking the spiritual walk. My name is Stephen Anderson. Thank you all for joining me again today as we go through and we do today's daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. We'll be doing July 24th, of course, and this will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning this will be the first time I hear it or read it right here on this podcast with you. And just a disclaimer, most of July so far has been from the book, The 8 Pillars of Prosperity. So if you really are enjoying these readings as much as I am, I would suggest you go grab that book, give it a read. There's a lot of great information in there, some meditations. It even has the definite a way to love selflessly. Talks a lot about that in that book. So one of them that's great. I really enjoy reading that one. Let me see here. Oh yeah, so since this is going to be my first time hearing it or reading it on here with you, you'll get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. So here we go. This is today's daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations for July 24th. Lack of sympathy arises in egotism. Sympathy arises in love. Simple. Sympathy leads us to the hearts of all men, so that we become spiritually united to them. And when they suffer, we feel the pain. And when they are glad, we rejoice with them. When they are despised and persecuted, we spiritually descend with them into the depths and take into our hearts their humiliation and distress. And he who has binding, uniting spirit of sympathy can never be cynical or condemnatory. But to have reached this ripened sympathy, it must needs be that he has loved much, suffered much, and sounded the dark depth of sorrow. It springs from acquaintance with the profoundest experiences, so that a man has had conceit, thoughtlessness, and selfishness burnt out of his heart. Sympathy, in its real and profound sense, is oneness with others in their strivings and sufferings. I really agree with what he's saying here. It's been my experience that this is true. The overall message of this one is very much a message that resonates with me on a lot of levels. And my ego had to be absolutely defeated before I could actually care about what someone else is going through. So with this reading, it opens up with that exact sentiment, really. Lack of sympathy arises in egotism. I don't care what other people are going through when I'm thinking about me. I don't care how other people look when I'm thinking about how I look. I don't care what I think about other people or other people think about each other when I'm thinking about what you think about me. One of my biggest defects of character, as they're called in some circles, is my selfishness and self-centeredness. Everything revolves around me, and if it doesn't, it should. That's what I used to think, anyway. It's taken a lot of effort and work and honesty to move through that. It's taken a lot of pain at the end of the day. Like I said, my ego had to be completely crushed, defeated. I had to thoroughly understand that my ego was going to kill me. And my ego was going to just continue to fail. And when I learned that, when I accepted that as a true fact, I accepted that completely and without reservation. I was able to finally gain sympathy for another human being, to care what someone else was going through, to wish to know how they felt about something, to wish to know where they were in life, to be able to genuinely feel sorrow for them and genuine joy for them as well. To not try to take it and make it my own by some egotistical warping of reality, but to just celebrate with somebody, to feel sorrow with somebody. It was a whole different way of living. So, this is the main body of it. And forgive me if I stumble over the words a little bit because there's some odd wording in this one, so bear with me. Sympathy leads us to the hearts of all men so that we become spiritually united to them. And when they suffer, we feel the pain. And when they are glad, we rejoice with them. That's what I was just talking about, right? Like, this is sympathy and relating or understanding or gaining the perspective of someone else's position and the emotion that comes along with it allows me to connect with somebody else. And that can be a scary thing sometimes because I not only feel their joy and their happiness, but I feel their pain and their suffering. And I was somebody previously that I only wanted to feel good all the time, and my whole life was revolving around feeling happy or pleasure or just what I considered positive, right? So to actually genuinely, excuse me, connect to somebody, man, I'd have to feel the full range of it. And I never made myself available to do that, right? But giving you the sympathy after the defeat of the ego allowed me to feel the full range of emotions and connect with another human being in a way that I didn't ever believe was possible for me. And it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And I'm so grateful for that. And I can feel the joy and the sorrow and the suffering and the happiness. All of it. Thank God for that. He goes on here, when they are despised and persecuted, we spiritually descend with them into the depths and take into our hearts their humiliation and distress. And he who has his binding and he who has this binding, uniting spirit of sympathy can never be cynical or condemnatory. Excuse me. So when we see people begin to suffer, when we see people going through rough times and difficult times in their lives, sympathy allows us to be right there with them, to stand with them as they go through this, to shoulder maybe a little bit of the weight to help them through, in the way of being a supportive person in their life, being somebody that they can talk to, practicing some kindness and compassion and gentleness for somebody that you know is hitting the wall. And it says here, we'll never be cynical or condemnatory. Meaning we're never going to be looking at somebody and criticizing them or judging them or thinking they're less than or deserve their punishments or rejoice in another person's pain. We are understanding and loving and kind. We're there to help lift, not suppress and push down. It's a whole different way of living. but to have reached this ripened sympathy. This part, I couldn't agree with more. Again, my experience has proven it true. But to have reached this ripened sympathy, so to get to this point where we can actually have this level of sympathy and compassion for another human being, it must needs be that he has loved much, suffered much, and sounded the dark depth of sorrow. We need to, this is kind of talking about what is commonly referred to today as empathy, which is that ability to relate to someone else's pain because of the pain we've already experienced. That doesn't mean we get to experience our pain with theirs, to take our pain and try to override theirs or throw it into the mix like it's something that to make it about ourselves. But what he's saying here, we have to understand the depths at which that pain can exist, and to understand how painful things can be, and how bad suffering can be, and how sorrow filled a human being can be. You have to love. You have to love deeply. That's what he's saying here. It must needs be that he has loved much, suffered much, and sounded the dark depth of sorrow. Because the amount that you suffer, the amount that you hurt, is equal to the amount that you can love, which is almost encouraging. I found that through processing my own grief, through processing my own pain. And because I've done that, and I've done that work, and I've taken that look, I can understand what somebody might be hurting, how badly someone might be hurting, how much it must taint the way the world looks to them. And it allows me to be right there next to them, and thank God for that. All right. Finishes up the main body of this. It springs from acquaintance with the profoundest experiences, so that a man has had conceit, thoughtlessness, and selfishness burnt out of his heart. Which for me, that meant I had to fully live in those things for a very long time. And that's what this, to me, is relating to. It springs from the acquaintance with the profoundest experience, so that a man has had conceit, thoughtlessness, and selfishness burned out of his heart. For me, that was to be completely living in conceit, thoughtlessness, and selfishness, to the point where I had to stop till I had my fill of these things, and I didn't want them anymore. I couldn't have them in my life, or I was going to die. I'm somebody that's attempted suicide. I'm somebody that's lived in drug addiction and alcoholism. I'm somebody that has lived a life that was completely selfish and self-centered and revolving around only myself without thought of others. And because I've experienced so much of it, I do believe it's been burnt out of my heart. I can't lie, it'll probably show up here. It shows up here and there. But almost as a reminder, don't do that. You don't forget that you're capable of this. And I choose to live a different way of life because of that. I have to. And that opens me up to having sympathy. The pain I have experienced from living the other way of life is one of the most profoundest experiences I've ever had. And then recovering from that state is another, a thing I never thought would be possible for me. But it's happened. And thank God. Thank God. And thank God for living this way of life, and that this was presented to me, and this was something that I was given the ability to embrace, so I could have a life that I didn't know was possible. All right. Now for the closing line here. Sympathy, in its real and profound sense, is oneness with others in their strivings and sufferings. So it is caring and sympathizing with someone through every emotion in every situation, positive, negative, however that might be defined for you. It's a whole different thing. And that is a connection, like I said previously, that I wouldn't sacrifice for anything now. It is a blessing beyond words to be able to connect with somebody in that way. So, all right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. We'll end that there. And that was July 24th. So again, that was from the Eight Pillars of Prosperity. And great read. Go ahead and take a look at it. And I will be back on tomorrow to do the reading for the 25th. Start rounding out July. So until next time, thanks.